basis of my philosophy comes from a book,
Okay.
and it's called The Choice by the Arbinger Institute. And it kind of reflects, and you've probably seen it. I try to live out the principles that it brought out. But it's a very quick book. It's about 60, 80 pages. But it's a manifesto about teaching and learning. What does that look like? The 4 principles it talks about in there is, the first one, it says, you are not the teacher, because it emphasizes that how many times have you heard either a really dull instructor or really even an engaging instructor? Even my most engaging lessons, guess what? The kids aren't going to remember that.
Mm-hmm.
So then how do they learn? It's because there's a teacher within each of us that helps us refine these ideas, think about things. We ruminate on things. We think about things whenever we don't even know we're thinking about them. That's what happens. So always remembering, I'm not the teacher. How do I help facilitate learning inside their heads for themselves? Because when I'm not there, how do I ensure that they're still learning and still pushing themselves as adults? Because when you become an adult, in many cases, learning stops in some ways. Learning stops. So how do I make it so that lifelong learning is ensured for them for the rest of their life? So that's the first one. Second principle talks about always being a learner, always learning. I will never stop learning. I always think that there's a way that I can improve myself or something I don't know. Obviously, that trailer has been my trick. Then the third principle is always see greatness. That means always think of, and you'll hear me say it throughout the day. You're doing great. You can do this. It's seeing greatness in your students, because your students respond to it. If you treat a student like they're slow, guess what? They're going to slow down to the pace that you expect of them. If you think that a student is a trouble student, they're going to become the trouble student. And I always think, the thing I always keep in the back of my head is, a trouble student is a troubled student. There's something else there beneath the surface that's reflecting in that way. We've got to figure out how. We've got to figure out what that is and how to address it in a way that's going to build them up and not tear them down. And then the last principle is build community. So how do we create a learning community that's safe, that's fun, that's kind of relaxed? I'm probably more relaxed than I really need to be, to my detriment sometimes. But it's hard to take a 5'2" guy seriously. It really is. Don't really let that. But it's true. I mean, the kids, they come here, and a lot of times school is not fun. I'm not saying school needs to be fun, but learning needs to be something that they look forward to. And that may not always look fun. Like, it didn't seem like fun, but I could see the wheels turning. Know what the end game is. What's the big walkaway? Why are we even teaching this lesson? If you don't know the answer to that question, the kids will never know the answer to that question. That's the first step, is knowing what's the end game. Because the lesson is not going to go according to plan. I'll promise you that. It'll never go according to plan. But if you know what the end game is, the end game's going to happen, and they're going to walk away with it. You can ensure that. You have the power to ensure that. Then it's up to them to think about it and to keep ruminating on it. Yeah, that's my biggest suggestion. Don't get too hung up. Be yourself. That's like the biggest thing, is like sometimes we focus so much on the art of teaching that we don't focus on the art of getting to know people and getting to know our students. Teaching can be a lot about techniques, but until we start making connections, learning's never going to happen. Never. So we've got to be thinking about, how do we create connections? And sometimes that requires us going off what our lesson plan is. Sometimes it is. I use habitudes a lot. And so some days, I haven't done it yet because I haven't found an opportune time. But if something happens in a class and I feel like there's a habitude that ties with it that we need to talk about, I'll pop it up there on the board, and that becomes our lesson, if necessary. What do we show the world, and what's really inside us? And does that match up? And if it doesn't match up, then we're living insecurely. And if we're living insecurely, then we're not going to give our best to the world. And the world only needs our best. It can't afford anything less than that. So, we really try to live by the three-circle model, but I have a different way. I have a different way of looking at the three-circle model. So typically, and I can't tell you where I saw this, but typically we think of the three-circle model as this, right? And so a lot of times, three-circle model, I show the kids, and it's wrong. I know it's wrong. But I show the three-circle model as this. And so you'll notice it's a little bit different than what your typical deal is. And I'm not so concerned about the size of the circles. That's not my concern. I'm not concerned about the size of the circles. What I'm concerned about is Ag Ed is the big picture. That's the technical content. That's what we're all walking away with. That's what every single one of us, we need that foundation. As we move in a little bit closer to this part, we have FFA, which focuses on leadership skills, career development. That's really a lot. That's where we're helping those kids make those connections for future leadership. Then the final one is the SAE, and that's where we can target a specific kid and say, we're going to make personalized learning happen for you, and it happens in the heart of that program. You need to have a general understanding of Ag Ed. You need to have these leadership skills and communication skills, but you need an SAE because that's where you're going to get the most out of our program. That's how we live out our program. And so SAEs are the main driver behind that. So you'll notice in horticulture today, this is where I'm going to need your help, is we have what are called, I used to call them SAE days, now I just call them foundational SAE days. Kids know when those days are happening. Usually they happen on Wednesdays. For animal science class, it happens on Fridays. So what a typical day looks like, we might go for a walk. So they have, this is their records. I don't have them transferred to 18, maybe I should, I don't know. But I have them keep records. So this was actually something, is today the 7th, right?
Yeah.
So we've got Jerry taken care of. I know Dust Bunny's been taken care of. I know Flash has been taken care of. Whoopsie. Somebody didn't take care of Lizzie. But this is their foundational SAE. They each get a little animal. There's little AJ's bunny over there. So unfortunately, he's going on Monday. He got sold, but we're going to get a litter of about 6 more coming that we'll get to raise out. So, but each student gets an animal. They switch at 9 weeks. But this system is an audit system. So this is, we talked about, I was on a bus ride with a lady. Her name's Dr. Olson, and she went and helped us at National Convention as our female sponsor. She is the auditing officer for the vet med complex at K-State. Me and her, we started having a conversation. I said, how do I prepare students, for example, how do I prepare them through their SAEs for career in veterinary science or animal science fields? And she said, first they need to take care of an animal. They need to learn how to take care of an animal because there are kids who don't know, who don't even never had an animal, and they come into those programs. They just think they're cute. They see pictures on Instagram and think they're adorable. And she says they need to learn how to take care of them and that it's work to take care of them. She said the second thing is you need to somehow figure out how you increase accountability and work ethic in those kids. And I said, well, how the heck do I do that? This came from a brainstorm of that on that bus ride to National Convention. So we ended up establishing, I asked her, I said, well, how do you make sure accountability is done at VetMed? How do you ensure that accountability and work ethic is ensured in your students at the VetMed complex? I said, because you'd be closed if you didn't. So she said, well, this is what we've made. So we took this, we just did it for each of the animals we have. Last year, it was horrible to get kids to sign up. I had parents emailing me, being like, why the heck does my kid have a B in animal science class? They're supposed to have an A. I said, because they don't freaking take care of their animal. I said, it's pretty obvious. And then that sparked a conversation at home, because then they started signing and making sure that their animal was taken care of. But then again, now this year, guess what? Everybody in the school, because they, of course, we're a school of that small, so everything trickles out, and they're like, Mr. Meals is going to hold you accountable to taking care of that animal, because we would expect nothing but the gold standard in that regards. And so, like I said, please don't video clean days tomorrow. It's Friday, clean days tomorrow, so don't look at all the poop over there. This is how it happens. Now, I haven't figured out how to do this yet in my shop class. This is coming. That's why I brought the Titan guy down here this past Tuesday. I brought him down here because I said, how do you keep track of your workers? How do you hold them accountable? Because I hear that phrase all the time from employees. They said, it doesn't matter what you teach them. We have to reteach them. We want good, hard workers. And I said, tell me how to make good, hard workers. If you answer me that question, I can solve your problem, but you got to tell me the answer to that question. They can never answer that question for me. So we're trying to find an answer. And we'll get there. We got there for annual science. It works so far. There's still some tweaks that we keep making. So.